Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dewbs & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Hello there, good evening to you. It's 6 o'clock and I'm Michelle Dewberry. Coming up tonight, the latest so-called race row got even worse today with more allegations made about the big Tory donor, and Rishi Sunak, of course, now under massive pressure to give back that 10 million quid. Sunak is having none of it, but should he? Should he give that money back or not? Also, Harriet Harman today has basically said it's time for Diane Abbott now to be let back into the Labour Party. Is it or not? And of course, we now know that kids will no longer be getting puberty blockers on the NHS. Is that the right decision? And speaking of puberty, get this, a school in Wales today, on the advice of external agencies, held a puberty party. Yes, indeed, to celebrate the kids' journey from childhood to adulthood. They're 12 years old. Is this a good idea or bonkers? Your thoughts, please. Also, should foreign governments be able to own British media? The government of today said not. Do you agree with that? And last but not least, migrants now will be given up to £3,000 to go to Rwanda. I mean, I'm starting to laugh now because it literally is just beyond a joke, all this now, isn't it? Your thoughts on it all, please. Indeed, so we're going to get stuck into all of that and more. But before we do, let's cross live for tonight's latest news headlines.
Good evening, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Your top story this hour. Diane Abbott, the MP at the centre of a growing racism row, has accused the Speaker of the Commons of not serving democracy after she wasn't called to speak in Parliament. It's after the Conservatives' biggest donor, Frank Hester, allegedly said that the former Labour MP made him want to hate all black women and that she should be shot. Sir Keir Starmer has confronted the Prime Minister over the remarks, pressing Rishi Sunak to return Mr Hester's £10 million donation. In today's Prime Minister's questions, the Labour leader asked whether Rishi Sunak was proud to be supported by someone making such offensive statements.
Weeks ago, he marched them out like fools to defend Islamophobia, and now the member for Ashfield is warming up the opposition benches for them. He won't hand the money back. He won't comment on how convenient it is that a man handed huge NHS contracts by his government is now his party's biggest donor. You have to wonder what the point is of a Prime Minister who can't lead and a party that can't govern.
The Prime Minister acknowledged Frank Hester's comments were wrong and racist, but declined to say his donations will be returned, instead calling out what he said were double standards in the Labour Party.
I'm absolutely not going to take any lectures from somebody am somebody who chose to represent an anti-Semitic terrorist group, Hizb ut-Tahrir, who chose to serve a leader who let anti-Semitism run rife in this Labour Party. Those are his actions, those are his values, and that's how he should be judged.
In other news, the First Minister of Wales has criticised Boris Johnson's leadership during the COVID pandemic. Mark Drakeford said the former Prime Minister was like the absent manager of a football team and accused him of not taking the pandemic seriously. Speaking at the COVID inquiry, he also said Mr Johnson was deliberately unclear as to whether some rules only applied to England. The Welsh Conservatives accused Mr Drakeford of using the inquiry to attack his political opponents and called for Wales-specific inquiry. Now, the Defence Secretary has warned Vladimir Putin to stop sabre-rattling over nuclear war. It comes as the Russian president warns that any US troops who venture to Ukraine will be treated as interventionists. Speaking on state television, Putin said that while Moscow is technically prepared for nuclear war, the country is not rushing into it. Grant Shapps spoke exclusively to GB News during a visit to Poland to see UK troops taking part in NATO exercises. He said the only way forward for Russia is to pull out of Ukraine.
It needs to stop sabre-rattling. It's irresponsible to talk like that, particularly about nuclear weapons. There is no threat to the Russian state. The threat, I'm afraid, is to Ukraine and to countries like Poland that are in here to the west of them, because Putin has invaded a democratic, free society, and he needs to pull out, and then there's no issue whatsoever.
An aristocrat accused of neglecting her newborn baby, leading to her death, has defended her decision to house the child in a tent. Constance Martin, who's 36, went on the run with her partner, 49-year-old Mark Gordon, in an attempt to keep their newborn baby. Miss Martin justified keeping her child outdoors in wintry conditions, telling the court that Jesus survived in a barn. She also said she didn't agree with medical warnings against keeping babies outside, saying that lots of children live without heating. Baby Victoria's remains were found in a supermarket bag near Brighton in March of last year. Miss Martin and Mr Gordon denied charges of manslaughter. The case is continuing. And Andy MacDonald has had the Labour whip restored after he was cleared of breaking party rules by using a controversial slogan at a pro-Palestine rally. The MP for Middlesbrough was suspended in October after he used the phrase "from the river to the sea" during a speech at a pro-Palestine event. The words refer to the land between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean, which many find offensive because it appears to refer to all of Israel. A Labour spokesperson said Mr MacDonald had been reminded that elected representatives must be mindful of how their words are interpreted. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Michelle.
Thank you very much for that. If you don't mind as well, I do just want to reflect on another story, because sometimes I think us news outlets, news stories, they come and go, don't they? But you might remember this story, actually. We're coming up to a month ago now. That awful story about that 2-year-old little boy that fell into the River Soar. I mean, as I said, he went very sadly into the water on the 18th of February now. So more than 200 officers have been searching for this little boy. You've had search and rescue teams. It's just absolutely tragic, and I cannot imagine what that little boy's family must be going through. It absolutely breaks my heart. You know, I wish that we could kind of keep all the focus and the eyeballs and attention on this. And I really hope that soon this little boy gets returned back to his family, because, as I say, I cannot even imagine what they must be going through. Anyway, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight, alongside me, my panel to keep me company and go through the news of the day. The PR consultant Alex Dean and the GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Good evening to both of you. Makes you sound very important, that title.
Do you think? It is very important.
I was reading it out there. I thought, oh, he sounds like a man not to be messed with, our Nigel. Although some of the topics that we've got coming up, I can tell you now, will be messing.
I'm going to get messed with.
Yeah, he's going to get messed with, I can tell you. Anyway, I want your thoughts on all the news of the day. Of course, I'll be coming on to that race round in just a second, that 10 million quid, should it be going back to where it came from or not? Also, the puberty blocker story yesterday, and get this, a school today in Wales has held a puberty party. Very strange goings on, if you ask me, but maybe you guys celebrate it and think it's a wonderful thing. We'll explore that. The Rwanda story as well, $3 grand up to try and send people over to Rwanda. Why are we just tinkering around the edges? Why are we just dealing with the symptoms and not the cause? But maybe you think indeed that this is the answer. Your thoughts, gbviews@gbnews.com is how you reach me. Or you can tweet or X me at GBNews. But of course, it was PMQs today. I've got to say, Rishi Sunak got a bit of a kicking, as to be expected. Let's listen to what Sir Keir Starmer had to say.
Is the Prime Minister proud to be bankrolled by someone using racist and misogynist language when he says the member for Hackney North and Stoke Newington makes you want to hate all black women?
Yes, of course. And Rishi Sunak was having none of that. Let's listen to his response.
The alleged comments were wrong, they were racist, and he has now, as I said, the comments were wrong, they were racist. He has rightly apologised for them, and that remorse should be accepted.
You just saw a clip there as well of Diane Abbott. She, a couple of times during PMQ, she kept rising up. She wanted to ask a question. She wasn't called by the Speaker to ask a question. She also was really not happy about that. You can see her, the kind of top right of your screen then. She's got that red jumper on. She's constantly trying to get up and get that Speaker's attention, but to no avail, I have to say. Right, let's start at the beginning. I've got to say as well, some further comments have been reported as well today, that this donor, Frank Hester, this is who we're talking about. You know, this time it was in relation to, allegedly in relation to Indians and where they should travel on a train, etc. Where do we even begin with this?
So that latest part is news to me, but I wanted to talk about the things he's admitted he said, because that seems more straightforward and easy.
Right.
The thing for me is that number 10 got there in the end. The government got to the point that they should have reached, which is that what he said is racist and wrong.
Yeah.
The trouble is, as so often we wind up with a procedure story in Westminster, is that members of Parliament has been sent out to do the press without that position. So it feels like...
What, you want about like Mel Stride, when he came out in the morning yesterday and he said, yeah, it wasn't a nice thing to say, but it wasn't based on gender and it wasn't based on race.
So my point is that if you're going to make a concession, you should do it right at the beginning, rather than allowing other people to take on arguments for you that are unsustainable. Because it seems to me what he said was racist and wrong, and it's the right thing to do, therefore, is to say so straight away. As far as the money's concerned, this is remarkable to me. Some people in this world seem to think it's logical to say, that person's a racist, let's give him £10 million back. I would far rather take the money and use it for something else.
So do you think the Tory party should keep that money then?
No, I would use the money for something... I mean, the smart politics is to take the money and spend it on the Muslim War Memorial, or to spend it on anti-racism training, or to take the money and spend it on something that demonstrates that you in no way aligned with the views that have been described. I just don't see the merit in giving someone £10 million for making remarks that you agree are racist.
Well, the pushback to that would be, well, it shows that the Tory party, for all of its talk about, you know, divisions and this and that and the other, the pushback would be, well, doesn't that send a message then that the Tory party, they put their money where their mouth is and they say, you know what, if you are that kind of person, literally, we don't want your involvement?
No, because my point would be you don't use that money anymore for campaigning or for supporting candidates in elections. You use it for something that's demonstrably anti-racist.
Nigel, your thoughts on it all?
Well, I find myself in the unusual position of agreeing with every word that Alex has just said.
There you go.
Which is a bit strange. Yes, I mean, firstly, that the money shouldn't be used for campaigning. Either give it back, I don't know what the grounds are for making a donation like that, or give it to charity. You could build 10 Muslim war memorials for £10 million.
Not the way we do infrastructure in the UK, you put it, Nigel.
That's the budget. I mean, the comments were racist. If Rishi Sunak really did have the integrity that he promised when he became Prime Minister, he would either give this money back or give it somewhere else, but he wouldn't keep it for the Tory party. But politics is cynical, that Hester's money makes up 20p in every pound of donations the Tory party have got. They can't afford to give it back, and so they're going to hang on to it. But it doesn't sound very good.
So that, on that one, it's really interesting. people aren't willing anymore to support political parties financially generally, right? And specifically, they don't like giving to general funds. But I think if you go to donors and you say, you can see the trouble we're in, can you help us? Can you make good this bad money that we've got and give us your good, clean money? I think there are donors in this country who might be willing to support it.
That'd be fine.
Having had a moment to think about it, I've realised, I think I know what I would do with this money. I would demonstrate the point about the fact that every lefty who says we should pay more tax and so forth doesn't actually voluntarily make a payment, which you can. I would, if I were the Conservative Party, I would write a cheque for £10 million to HMRC.
I don't think you can do that with money like this. No, you can't give it to the government.
They'd cash it.
Well, it was a donation to the Tory party, and I presume there are a few strings attached to a donation. There's no reason why you couldn't give it to charity.
On donations, I don't think.
No reason why you couldn't give it to the charity. I think it would be wrong for the government to take it and then bung it into Treasury coffers.
Because there's a difference between the Conservative Party, a campaigning political organisation, and the government, which governs for all of us. And my point is, I think it would make a useful point to say, this is not our party political money. We're not going to use this anymore. We're going to give it to the revenue.
Yeah, OK. Well, I disagree that you can give it to the government, but there you go.
Well, I do have to make clear, of course, do all of the right boxes here. And I do have to say, of course, that lots of this stuff is alleged at the moment. Frank Hester, he has come out. He has apologised, of course. He said that actually he admits that he was rude and all the rest of it and shouldn't have said those kind of things. I do think it's quite interesting, though, the timing of this, because I do need to be clear with everyone. This information here, these conversations that were apparently private conversations that were had, these were about half a decade ago.
Yeah, but the reason I didn't mention that to start with is that nobody cares, right? This is obviously a political move, but it's been well done. It's a well-executed attack on the Conservative Party. And once that's been done to you, the right thing to do isn't... You can make that point as a subsidiary point, once you've conceded that these remarks were racist and wrong, as the Prime Minister has rightly done. But you can't put that up front, because in the end, politics is a dirty game. Whoever put this in their back pocket and waited for an election year for it made this attack rather well.
And it was only 5 years ago. I'm surprised he actually continues as a CEO of a major company. I can't think of many CEOs who would actually have survived if they'd made comments like that. If one of us made a comment on air like that, we wouldn't be on air again. I mean, the reaction to these things is phenomenal. Yeah. It seems to be that the Tories, as usual, get these things wrong in the first instance. They wouldn't call the remarks racism yesterday. Today they've come round to calling them racist. That's the right thing to do. But Alex is right. They should get their act together and do it immediately.
Yeah, and I've got to say, of course, this fella, he apparently did reach out to Diane Abbott a couple of times and has apologised or tried to apologise there. And he says he wants to make it clear that he regards racism as a poison, which has no place in public life. And he's certainly been put through the ringer, this fella. I'm surprised that he's not said, do you know what, I'll take my money back, thank you very much. But who knows what will happen next. Anyway, what I found interesting as well in this is Harriet Harman. She was speaking about, let's just listen to her, actually, about Diane Abbott.
I would be very sad if Diane Abbott were to leave Parliament not as a member of the Labour Party. I would like to see it resolved, and I hope it can be resolved in a way which has Diane Abbott back in the party.
So it's really interesting. I think it's quite... If the Labour Party had done what I thought was an obvious thing to do and put Diane Abbott, who, whatever you think of her, has been a symbol of cultural change in this country for the better in recent decades, if they put her in the Lords, as I thought merited, she's, I think, not the best possible MP she could be at this point in the cycle, but she would be a perfectly respectable and legitimate member of the House of Lords, they would have resolved this. But instead of putting her in the Lords, they took her. They questioned whether they should get reselected. She naturally fired up and said, "Right, I'm going to have a fight. I'm coming back. I'm going to fight again and again." And now they've wound up suspending her. It is. You've got to separate out the two issues. The fact that this guy was racist about her doesn't mean that she gets a clean slate and is forgiven anything she does. She was, in turn, guilty of voicing a particularly pernicious kind of racism, anti-Semitism, which meant that the Labour Party rightly suspended her. And I don't think what this guy said about her actually changes her case one bit.
Nigel?
I think she should be allowed back into the parliamentary party. I think she should stand as an MP. I think the same thing about Jeremy Corbyn. He should be allowed back in and stand as an MP.
Oh, Nigel.
The situation with Diane Abbott is that she made some clumsy remarks that seemed to be the beginning of a debate that was never continued, because she had to withdraw those remarks, which she did, in fairness, immediately. Doesn't excuse them. They were on the surface anti-Semitic, but I think that if you look at it a bit more closely, she's now been suspended for some time. It was last year.
Yeah.
She should be allowed back.
The thing is, you've got to be able to, in politics, I think you've got to be able to read the environment a bit. And it was obvious. I was making a bit of a concession to your point, really, about whether something's disproportionate. It was clear the leadership wanted to move on from the Corbyn regime, with which not just Corbyn, but Diane Abbott were indelibly associated.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they were looking for an excuse exactly, but the fact that Diane Abbott gets a bit less leeway than other people is obvious.
Yes, I mean, it was quite clear that Keir Starmer wanted both Diane Abbott and Jeremy Corbyn out.
Correct.
I think that the Labour Party is bigger than that, and it should be a broader church, which is why I'd like to see them back.
And do you think, just briefly, she should have been called today to ask a question or respond or whatever in PMQs?
Yes, I'm actually quite surprised the Speaker not calling her on the basis that everyone's talking about her. She's there in the chamber. She has something to say. I think MP should have heard from her.
I agree completely.
I certainly think the optics of that certainly weren't good, were they? And as I said, Diane Abbott was definitely not happy about not being called to speak during that session. Anyway, your thoughts, gbviews@gbnews.com is how you reach me. I want to bring you in on that. After the break, my inbox is lit up with that one, I can tell you. I want to talk to you as well. Yesterday, it was confirmed now that the NHS will not be giving new puberty blockers to children. Thank goodness common sense prevails, is what I say. So I want to look at that and get your opinion on it. But also, as well, today, a school in Wales hosted a puberty party for 12 and 13-year-olds to celebrate their journey from childhood to adulthood. Is this a wonderful thing or a bit weird? You tell me. I'll see you in 2.
Mark Dolan Tonight. Weekends from 9 p.m.
Kinsey, great to have you back on the show. Now, listen, we're not slated to talk about the Prince Harry story, but I've kind of surprised a few people by suggesting that I think he should have armed royal protection when he's in Britain. What do you think?
Well, they aren't my tax dollars that are paying for Prince Harry's protection, but I agree with you. I think that he should feel safe, and he should feel safe to bring his family back to see his father, if that's the case.
Well, his stepmother, Kinsey, Queen Camilla, gets a well-deserved break. Tell me more.
That's right. Queen Camilla has no engagements on her agenda this week, with the Times reporting that she will spend a few days of downtime with the king. Camilla has been working overtime to support the monarchy. Just last month, she repeatedly drove over 6 hours to a royal engagement after her flight was grounded because she reportedly did not want to let down her husband. She will resume engagements on March 11th, representing the king and leading the royal family for the Commonwealth Day service at Westminster Abbey. A source told the Times, although she was not expecting to find herself in the position of leading the family, the Queen is absolutely prepared to do whatever needs to be done for the institution. And can I just say, speaking of Harry, I think the fact that Queen Camilla is seen as leading the family is significant proof that Prince Harry would not return to temporarily support the family, because Camilla's elevated position is likely not something sitting well with him right now. He loved Queen Elizabeth II. He likely resents the idea of Queen Camilla. And we know that that's a position he felt like his mother should be in.
Most definitely. He was very nasty about Queen Camilla in his book Spare.
He was. So I imagine that the idea of her leading the family is something he has a hard time digesting.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock. PR consultant Alex Dean and GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. We've just been asking whether or not this 10 million quid that was given to the Tories should be either given back or spent on different things or what. Jenny says the Tories should definitely give back that cash. In fact, why on earth is it even legal to make this size of donation? Surely, if people give that much money, they expect something in return. I've got to say as well, it was two separate donations, one from an individual and one from an organisation. I probably should make that clear. Max says definitely not. This money should not be returned. He said these comments 5 years ago. This is all just politicking to try and make the Tories somehow look like a racist party, which Max says is obviously not true. Debbie says, why isn't anyone out there asking why on earth it's taken half a decade for this to come out? Some people are just hacking away, trying to chip away against the Tories. This money then, we were just saying, you know, I mean, there's nothing stopping this guy, I presume, from saying, you know what, I'll take the money back.
Well, I imagine he's a wealthy man and he might be in a position to make donations to other parties even without the 10 million. But you better believe, I think, if he received the 10 million, he'd choose to give it elsewhere. He might give it to a philanthropic organisation, or he might take it to another party like, say, Reform, and say, here you go. And you better believe it would make a big difference to a minor party to receive 10 million quid. In response to your viewer, as long as we don't have state funding of political parties, which I would disagree with because it tends to calcify incumbents in place, then people making donations to political parties is necessary to help people have democracy in any functioning way, and it's an important aspect of free speech. So I'm in favour of people making the donations, but I would also make the point to your viewer who pointed out how long ago it was. The Conservative Party has almost certainly spent this money in 5 years. It's not like it's... think of all the elections we've had since.
I don't think the money was... The comments was made 5 years ago, but I think the donations... two separate donations in the last 12 months.
Even so, in a 12-month period, political parties in election cycles will spend money over a 12-month period. It's not like he gave it yesterday, is it?
Indeed, Paddy, a viewer, Paddy, doesn't beat around the bush. He just says, Michelle, it's clear. I'll tell you what, if the Tories don't want this 10 million quid, can you tell them I'll have it? Yes, Paddy, I'll be sure to pass on your details. I think there'll be a long queue, I've got to say. Anyway, look, did you catch this story? It was announced yesterday the NHS has now confirmed that it's banned puberty blockers for children. Good is what I say. I would even question why on earth this was approved to be allowed to be given in the first place. Sometimes I do wonder what on earth our country is coming to. Anyway, Miriam Cates, she was speaking out about this earlier on today. Let's have a listen.
Really pleased with this decision to stop prescribing puberty blockers on the NHS. We've got to this point now where it's a very sensible position. But I would say that it isn't, although it's going to be illegal for the NHS to prescribe these drugs, they are available privately, online and in private clinics.
Well, there you go. And I've got to say, this decision from yesterday only applies in England. And as you're just hearing then, you can still get these medications on, within the private sector and also in places like Scotland. Alex Dean, your thoughts on this one?
I don't think that we should give life-changing medical treatments to children like this. You should give treatment to children, of course, to make them better, but that's not what this does. It assists you in supposedly changing your gender, which isn't actually possible. And what happens to children as a result of this is that they go on very often unable to have children themselves, having their own sex lives interfered with quite significantly. And the point is that whilst adults might freely choose, preferably, by the way, with their own money rather than state's money, adults might freely choose to do something to their bodies. Children should not be able to, because we recognise in law that children are bad decision makers. We don't let children choose to smoke or drink or even leave school whenever they want. We don't allow children to decide their own bedtimes. So why should children be able to take life-altering amounts of medical treatment because they feel different in a certain period of time?
Indeed, Nigel?
I'm in favour of this on the basis that what the advice was, the medical advice, was that there's no evidence that these are safe, and also no evidence that they are clinically the right thing to do. So I'm prepared to go along with medical opinion on this, and if they're saying there is a question mark over whether or not they will harm children, I'm not convinced they will, by the way, but if there's a question mark over it, I'd prefer to take the advice of doctors than anybody else on this one.
Yeah, and I've got to say, there's been a lot of pushback from people that do think that these children should be getting these blockers, because I've seen a lot of it, people coming out and saying that the people that are in favour are saying these are safe, they're basically, they don't cause harm, they don't cause lasting damage, and they actually think that it's going to cause more damage to the children that are gender confused to actually allow their bodies to develop. And they would actually say this is a very cruel policy, inhumane policy, and they would encourage people to be trying to fight this policy.
Well, Stonewall, for instance, has come out today against this. That's what they're saying. And that may be true. The point I'm making is that if you get medical advice that this is not a good idea because we don't know enough about it, I think that at that stage you follow the medical advice. As Miriam Case pointed out, there's nothing to stop you going privately. If you're determined to go and do it, you could go privately. When it comes down to what children should and shouldn't do, I don't think you put age limits on whether a child might want to change gender. What you do is you deal with the individual circumstances of that child.
Do you conceive of a child deciding to change gender at 4?
No, I'm not putting an age limit on it.
That's my point. Why not?
Because that's where we get into difficulties. Is 4 the right age? Probably not. Is 15 the right age, or should it be 16? You get into an area where it becomes difficult. If you talk to teachers who go through this, I mean, schools have been dealing with this for years, and they've been dealing with it quietly, and they seem to find that they can get on with it quite well.
I think there is room for agreement between us, to this extent at least, which is that when faced with the state saying, because there is inadequate or no evidence that this is safe, we're going to suspend it, in my view, the correct response from organisations like Stonewall, we can argue whether it's right they've been captured by this interest group or not, but anyway, when an organisation like Stonewall disagrees with it, to my mind, their response should be, here is our reasoned evidential case for why you're wrong, and we will seek to campaign to have the law changed in our favour. Instead, the response you get, certainly from the online warriors, is various kinds of bigots, transphobe, you're wrong, you hate people, you want them to die. No reason, no attempt to turn the case around, no attempt to say the decision has not gone on our way. Our role is to try and change people's minds and convince them that we are right.
There you go. I'll come back to this in a sec. But for now, Nigel Farage is up at 7 o'clock. Nigel, good evening to you.
I'm not hearing the programme.
Could we get programme in Nigel's ear, please?
Nigel, can you hear me? No, he cannot. I saw him, though, looking very handsome and raring to go. You can catch him at 7 o'clock tonight. You see, I'm a mum to a young one, and this kind of whole notion that children are being told or encouraged to believe or supported to believe that they can change their sex is something which really concerns me, because my biological son cannot suddenly become a biological girl or woman just because he feels like he's been born in the wrong body. And there's something about this, like if a child came to an adult and said, for example, I feel like I'm really overweight, and they were starving themselves and they were on the cusp of anorexia, a sensible adult wouldn't be going, oh, yeah, you're really fat, let's reduce your weight. If a child came to an adult and said, I'm really depressed and I don't want to live, a sensible adult wouldn't be saying, oh, well, let me help you end your life, and so on or so forth. But there's something about this notion that when a child goes to a sensible adult and says, Mummy, I don't think I'm a boy, I think I'm a girl, all of a sudden these adults start indulging this and saying, well, maybe you are in the wrong body, let's give you this treatment, let's give you that treatment, let's put you on this pathway. It's absurd to me and very dangerous, and has the potential to absolutely catastrophically end life, and it's based on a fallacy. You cannot change your biological sex.
You're absolutely right. You can't change your biological sex, but you can change your gender. And that applies to people under the age of 18 as it applies to people over the age of 18. usually it's schools which are the first places where, if we're talking about children, that they come across it. So it may be the best result to come out of it would be a child saying, I want to change my gender, and talking to their parents. That is the best possible outcome. The second best outcome is the child who is not sure they can talk to their parents, but they'll talk to their teacher and ask their teacher to talk to their parents.
Well, speaking...
The worst outcome is the teacher suddenly being faced with looking for a bed that night for a child who's been chucked out of home because of this, and is then going around trying to get social services or a church group to provide that bed. That's where the worst outcome comes. So it's not about encouraging people.
But I think that so many parents are put into this cleft position where they're told, oh, if you don't indulge this in your child might end up, you know, going down to a route of suicidal thoughts or whatever, and then it terrifies the parents. And I'm not comfortable with that idea either. You mentioned school zones. Something caught my eye that I thought was very interesting today. There's a school in Wales, and it's held a puberty party, their words, not mine, a puberty party for their year 8 pupils, so we're talking 12 and 13-year-olds, and it's all about basically celebrating their journey from childhood to adulthood. Of course, I've contacted the school in question and asked them about this. They said that they're acting on advice from external agencies. Well, of course, I went back and asked who are these external agencies, and I've yet to receive a reply. I sent that request last night. Where are you on these puberty parties for children?
First of all, let's keep this in proportion. Puberty party is far less harmful than giving children life-changing amounts of medicine to try to change their gender. So, you know, it falls into the bracket of, OK, if you want to, or else I wouldn't do it myself, rather than that's terrible and I think the state should intervene. But the reason that I disagree with it, on balance, I'm not saying it's as bad as the kinds of things we've just been discussing, but the reason I'm against it on balance is that on reflection one realises and thinks children arrive at puberty at different points. Some people hit puberty at 11. Some people hit it a good deal later. And it seems to me, and some people are even earlier than 11, and it seems to me that imposing a one-size-fits-all party on it, for some kids who are going to be very far down the track, and some kids who really will feel that this is not for them yet, and accentuate the fact they're not part of that group that are going through puberty, feels to me like a bad idea.
But that strikes me as the point of it. You're absolutely right. It could well be that you'll have kids there who are going through different stages, haven't started, some finishing. The fact that they can talk about it between them, share that information. The ones who haven't started, asking the ones who have, what is it like? What to expect? What should I worry about? What shouldn't I be worried about?
Why don't you talk to your mates about? You talk to your mates about that at school. You wouldn't need to attend and this is the quote, a puberty party.
Well, we don't know how even the head teacher says. So I'm not quite sure that the word "party" was the right one.
Well, it's their words, not mine. That is a direct quote, and
that's right. No, it is. Yeah,
but
the head says I'm not sure that she's not sure that was the right thing to do. So we don't know quite what a puberty party looks like.
But the trouble is that however you dress it up. Having the event, let's just say event, having an event is a defined point in time, whereas puberty is a process. And there are going to be some people who reach the defined point in time as designated by their school, who feel way behind their cohort.
We don't know it's a one-off event. There could be other events. There could be things the teachers are doing to talk the kids through what to expect, what they're going through.
That is what happens in your personal sexual education classes and so forth. That's what happens in the course of a process over time where you teach people, rather than setting a date and saying, this is the puberty party. And I can guarantee you there'll be some people who will be... It's not just a nice, pleasant process, that, as you describe it. Some children are...
We've all been through it, and it's not a nice process.
Some children are mean to one another. And if you haven't really developed in puberty by the time of your puberty party, you will be mocked by some of your peers.
But that's why the school is the right place to do something like this, for that very reason, that you've got teachers around to make sure people aren't mean to each other. And the fact that that the kids will talk about it amongst each other, that must be better than suffering alone.
Well, there you go. You can have the final say on that. I've got to say, the head teacher basically celebrates this, says it's all about helping kids understand how to take care of themselves, do things that feel good, ask questions, talk about what's happening, and get support, etc., with their mental health. They do say they've had quite a kickback on social media about this, so I've deliberately removed the name of the school just for that reason, really. They say it's concerning that many of people who've commented on social media seem to have misunderstood what is meant by the term puberty. Well, I've got to say, I completely understand what is meant by the term puberty, but I do think there's something a little bit odd about all these external agencies suddenly getting involved. Who are these external agencies? What are all of their agendas? They're just taken in part. You can pick all these things, just one little isolated incident, and sure enough, it's harmless. But when you start piecing things together, I do wonder what actually goes on in all of these schools these days and whether or not it's moving in the right direction. You, I'm sure, will have the final say on that. GBViews at gbnews.com is how you can get hold of me tonight. I'll be bringing you into the conversation after the break. But I also want to ask you, should foreign governments be banned from owning UK media? Your thoughts? I'll see you in 2.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Tomorrow, most of us will see some rain. It's going to be another very mild day, particularly across parts of England and Wales. Today, we've had this weather front straddling the country. It's been providing cloud and outbreaks of rain. Some very windy conditions across northern Scotland. They'll slowly ease through the night, as will the showers. But this zone of damp weather will persist, staying pretty soggy over North Wales, northwest England. The rain just creeping back across Northern Ireland and eventually into southern Scotland by dawn. Much of the south and east of England staying dry, very mild here, 9 or 10 the low in towns and cities. Colder across Scotland, a touch of frost possible in the countryside here, but we should start with some sunshine. Still a few showers over the Northern Isles. Rain spreading quickly through the central belt. A wet morning for Northern Ireland. That rain slowly pushes northwards. A few showers over northern England, some heavy showers for Wales and southwest England through the middle of the day. A few getting further east, but much of eastern England, I suspect, will stay dry. And with some sunshine here, we could reach 17, maybe 18 Celsius. A very mild day here, but feeling colder with the wet weather across Scotland. Some snow over the hills. That's still around on Friday morning, but slowly it should start to pull away, and then we're left with bright spells and showers for many. Still quite breezy, and notice the winds coming down from the north across northern Scotland, so a real chill here with temperatures only 6 or 7 Celsius. Again, no further south, pretty mild for the time of year, 15 or 16 degrees.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debate, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewbin. I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Lots of divided opinion, I have to say, on those topics that we've just been discussing. Elaine says, Michelle, many children are autistic. They go on to this path of the gender dysphoria, and it doesn't end well, is what Elaine is perhaps suggesting, if I'm interpreting that right. Michael says, many people are already campaigning so that young children go private and access these drugs. You're absolutely right. That is indeed. Neil is questioning whether or not these kind of medicines should even be a factor within an NHS. He's questioning, is this what the NHS is for? Isn't it about keeping you alive, fit and healthy and well? I'll bring some of you into the conversation in a few minutes, but for now, it's looking like foreign governments will be banned now from owning UK news organisations. This is all about, we've had the conversations about whether or not the UAE, it'd be a fund basically backed in part by that government, would be able to acquire the Telegraph and the Spectator here in this country. Where are you on the decision that's been made today that actually the answer to that is no, they shouldn't be able to do that?
I think they shouldn't.
So you support the government in this one?
I do,
Yep.
yeah. On the basis that even if you have various editorial controls in place, you're always conscious of what your owner wants. I used to work for Robert Maxwell, and I know when Alastair Campbell and myself were political editors on Mirror Papers, the arguments we had with him to try and stop him doing mad things were constant. The same thing would happen if a government owns it, and it's much more serious with a government doing it on the basis you might be tempted to toe the line that the government wants to give you. A friendly government now might be a hostile government later, which is why it is a bad thing. Nor should the British government, by the way, own any British news media either.
Oh, OK. UK government not allowed either. Interesting. Alex, where are you?
I'm a bit more free market than you, I think, and I think it falls. Well, I respect, of course,
inevitably.
I respect your lifetime in the media, which a professional lifetime in the media, which informs your perspective. But I think for me, this falls into the kind of I don't like it, but I'm not sure the state should have to intervene or should intervene perspective. There are two relevant regimes, right? The first one is our National Security and Investment Act, under which something can be designated as something of sufficient significance that it shouldn't be allowed to have foreign investment in. And those were used to be defined quite narrowly, and the risk is that the definition creep takes it out and out and out until in the end we deter investment from overseas, which I wouldn't like. And the second, which may seem an unusual comparison, but it's worth making, is the export controls we have over objects of art. Because the reason I mention that is we have the Waverley criteria of whether you can sell a piece of art or something. You know, is it aesthetically important? Is it culturally significant? And so forth. And it seems to me you could make those kinds of criteria, change them for media outlets. We have a vigorously competitive media environment in this country. It's not as if it would reduce competitiveness in the UK environment. It's going to insult the UAE if we say you can't buy something like this, which I think is a relevant factor too. Whilst on balance, I'd rather...
What do you think relevant about that?
Well, I'd rather not go around insulting foreign countries if I could help it. I mean, on the other hand, it may be that we take the view in the end that that we think they'd be interfering so much that we wouldn't allow them to. But it seems to me they've put on their bid all manner of things about editorial independence and so forth.
My point there is actually that they don't work. That yes, everybody who takes over a news organisation says they won't interfere, they will leave the job to editors.
Yeah.
And I've never known one that's worked completely like that, except the old times under Lord Thompson.
Isn't that an argument, Nigel, against Rupert Murdoch owning media in this country, or indeed a foreign fund, a fund based in Dubai, investing in this channel?
I think it's worse when it comes down to a government rather than an individual.
I accept
yes, you're right. Rupert Murdoch also interferes constantly in his media outfits. But I mean, we can't stop the human nature angle of it. If you've got a guy who owns a newspaper, say, it's very difficult to stop them wanting to play with it. But if you've got a foreign government involved, and especially if there was an international crisis going on, and the editor wanted to take one view which would be against the interests of that country, it would make it very difficult for the editor to do that.
Also, as well, people will say, well, hang on a second, how come foreign governments can have shares in, say, an airport in this country? Or, yeah, but
it's not a public interest thing there. With an airport just sends planes backwards and forwards.
No, but if you were talking
about actually forming opinion.
No, Michelle's got a
I'm talking about people will say critical infrastructure, so whether that's water.
You were making the point about in extremis, right? You were talking about in extremis. What if something goes wrong and we're at odds with the foreign owners of this newspaper? Surely it's as significant or more significant if we were at odds with the owners of a critical piece of national infrastructure, an airport or an airline and so forth. And many of the organisations...
That's a security issue. I'm talking about a public interest issue, which is a paper forced to take a particular line on behalf of a foreign government, which has nothing to do with security, and then finding they couldn't do it. That seems to me the danger. And what you don't then get is the plurality of journalism that you should have in this country.
Well, what we may be getting to here is where people really do make a distinction because, of course, the Spanish invest heavily in airport and aviation infrastructure. You may or may not welcome it. The French-backed organisation owns the Eurostar and train infrastructure. The Italians go big on defence infrastructure and ownership. What we may mean is that we don't like the UAE and we feel less comfortable with them investing than we do with the European authorities that we've allowed to buy bits of UK infrastructure.
Would apply to America or Australia.
Glenn says, Michelle, there's barely a British company, he says, nowadays that doesn't seem to be foreign-owned. He says, surely one more won't make a difference. But there's a big distinction, though, Glenn, isn't there? It's completely different having a foreign owner versus a foreign government being in large part that owner. That's what I'd say to you. I do think as well, I should just mention that one of the original bidders, I think for the Telegraph as well, was or is one of the primary shareholders in here as well. I do just think
Michelle,
I should just throw that in.
The distinction I think we come down to for a lot of people is that if foreign ownership, foreign investment in things in the United Kingdom is good, we should encourage that. And as usual, this is the media thinking there is a unique status for media which has to be maintained.
Well, there you go. You can have the final word on that. The latest harebrained idea now with what to do with so-called asylum seekers anyway in this country now is to offer them up to £3,000 to move to Rwanda. I mean, this is now just becoming absolutely absurd, isn't it? Or do you think this is a great idea? Tell me and I'll see you in 2.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 p.m.
I've got an idea. I think that all 30-year-olds should be given £10,000 from the banks of baby boomers. We've got a situation in this country now where millennials are the first generation in modern times expecting to be poorer than their parents. We, as 30-year-olds like me, are half as likely to own a house as people my age 30 years ago. In fact, the cost of a home in Britain compared to average incomes has as big a gap today as it did, wait for it, in the 1860s. It is a Dickensian situation.
Now, I'm sorry about the housing crisis for your generation.
You're not, though, are you?
No,
because you're profiting from it.
I'm profiting from it. Don't be ridiculous.
The house prices now, compared to that period.
If this is the case, Benjamin...
Have incomes gone up that fast?
To penalise and punish the elderly when they have worked all their lives to put into the system and say it's your fault, whingy, whiny, we're going to be envious...
But we're being punished.
No, by the politics, so be the change you want to see in the world.
Taxes, I am actually, and I'm about to tell you about the change I want to see in the world.
Are you good? As long as it's not whining about it.
I'm going to stop whining about it, but we are being taken advantage of at the moment to profit, to help the old. Most of taxpayers' money is spent in 2 departments, the NHS, so the health department, and the Department for Work and Pensions. Those departments disproportionately serve the older population. Now, I've got no issue with that, but let's not pretend that it is not young working people that is paying for the public services for old people. So actually, we are having it hard, and I just look at the future, and we see a future of perpetually higher taxes to pay for this increasing ageing population, a shrinking labour force, and you're here saying we've got nothing to worry about.
The young stop voting for mass immigration parties. The young stop voting for parties that don't build houses.
Immigrants actually pay taxes, pensioners don't.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. PR consultant Alex Dean and the GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Let me just try and squeeze one more story in. We all know now what's going on with the channel and the plans that are going around and around trying to get sorted when it comes to Rwanda. Well, now failed asylum seekers are set to be offered up to £3,000 now to voluntarily move to Rwanda. I mean, I've got to say, there's like a slight tweak on an existing voluntary return scheme that already exists. Are you in favour of this? Is this going to work, Alex?
Failed asylum seekers should be promptly deported.
Yeah, I think they should.
But where? And so that, and there is the rub, right? Of course, first of all, you think their country of origin, and if their country of origin is a place that which they face genuine danger and were fleeing from, then they would be a real asylum seeker. They wouldn't be a failed asylum seeker.
Indeed.
So I would send them back to their home nation. But the second thing we need to do, and this is why our membership of the ECHR it winds up being so troublesome, is that they should be returned to the safe nation from which they came. And under international law presently, you can't do that. They shouldn't be coming from France, which is a safe nation, and then be able to claim asylum here. Under current law, international law, they can.
Nigel?
You've got 55,000 people who are stuck in this ludicrous position that we've created where they can't stay in this country, but we can't remove them either. In the event that some of those people who are getting pretty fed up with it can get 3,000 quid and they fancy Rwanda, I see no problem with that, with doing that. It'll do nothing to stop the boats. The people who are coming across on the boats aren't covered under this scheme, that they'll still face forced removal if the Rwanda scheme ever gets off the ground. But it's going to cost millions and it won't be the deterrent that they want it to be.
I think some of that is correct, and just in case I've pleased anyone so far, let me make sure everyone disagrees with me by the end of the show. In the course of waiting for the decision on an asylum process or a refugee decision, I would allow those people to work, to defray some of the cost, pay tax on the cost.
They can after a year.
I would allow them to work very quickly.
Well, the danger of doing that is that the moment you allow them to work, they have a stake in the country, and so it makes it much more difficult to remove them. But if they've been stuck for a year because we haven't processed them quickly enough.
Auf Wiedersehen, pet. If you can have temporary workers in a country by invitation, you can certainly have temporary workers on asylum.
More important to actually get the backlog down and then get them removed as quickly as possible or granted asylum in this country so they can begin work immediately.
I do both.
But surely the key to all of this is to rewind and actually stop people making those crossings in the first place, because all of this is just tweaking
that is part of why I said
treating the symptoms.
The responsibility sits with safe nations through which they come, and at the moment the status quo under international law says that's OK. And if you saw last week, the French basically escorted a ship from just off their coast into UK waters. Now, the French have been much better of late, possibly because we're paying them a great deal of money to be better. But when you see this sort of thing, you realise what a farce international law is.
Carol says she's outraged that the government is spending this money in this way. You think that they've lost the plot? I mean, the flip side of that, though, Carol, is when you think about how much money it would cost in repeat potential appeals and hotel costs or whatever else, 3,000 or up to, actually, seems like cheap at half the price. Lots of you, I mean, Leslie, she's saying, it just feels like we're constantly wanting to reward people who have entered the country illegally. I mean, that sentiment is felt by many. But again, I come back to my point, they're just not stopping these boats. And until you do that, you can have all the harebrained schemes in the land and it'll make not a blind bit of difference. Alan, one of my viewers, says, can I have the £3,000? He'd head to Rwanda like a flash, he says. He's had enough of the UK. I think, and I worry, Alan, I think there might be quite a queue of people that would feel the exact same thing as you, and I think that is a real shame. But for now, Nigel, thank you very much for your company. Alex, thank you as well for yours. And always, thank you for your company, for choosing to be with us at 6 o'clock. Don't forget, if you ever need to go out, you can take it with you on the radio as well. What a treat for your earlobes. Anyway, look, Farage is up next. I'll see you tomorrow night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Tomorrow, most of us will see some rain. It's going to be another very mild day, particularly across parts of England and Wales. Today, we've had this weather front straddling the country. It's been providing cloud and outbreaks of rain. Some very windy conditions across northern Scotland. They'll slowly ease through the night, as will the showers. But this zone of damp weather will persist, staying pretty soggy over North Wales, northwest England. The rain just creeping back across Northern Ireland and eventually into southern Scotland by dawn. Much of the south and east of England staying dry, very mild here, 9 or 10 the low in towns and cities. Colder across Scotland, a touch of frost possible in the countryside here, but we should start with some sunshine. Still a few showers over the Northern Isles. Rain spreading quickly through the central belt. A wet morning for Northern Ireland. That rain slowly pushes northwards. A few showers over northern England, some heavy showers for Wales and southwest England through the middle of the day. A few getting further east, but much of eastern England, I suspect, will stay dry. And with some sunshine here, we could reach 17, maybe 18 Celsius. A very mild day here, but feeling colder with the wet weather across Scotland. Some snow over the hills. That's still around on Friday morning, but slowly it should start to pull away, and then we're left with bright spells and showers for many. Still quite breezy, and notice the winds coming down from the north across northern Scotland, so a real chill here with temperatures only 6 or 7 Celsius. Again, no further south, pretty mild for the time of year, 15 or 16 degrees.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We've got cash, treats and a spring shopping spree to be won in a great British giveaway. You could win an amazing £12,345 in tax-free cash. Plus there's a further £500 of shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. We'll also give you a gadget package to use in your garden this spring. That includes a games console, a pizza oven and a portable smart speaker, so you can listen to GB News on the go. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel. 2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be